Hey, this is Kurt from Dr. Hacksaw. Wanted to give you guys a look at a little project we did, making some shaker doors for a small cabinet. So what is a shaker door? It's essentially a frame made out of 4 pieces of wood with a panel in the center that fits in a groove. The 2 side pieces are called stiles and go the full length of the door, and the top and the bottom pieces are called rails, and they fit into the stiles in a variety of different ways. To fit the rail into the stile neatly, 2 corresponding router bits are used, 1 for each side. These have a variety of different profiles, as you can see here. We're using the one on the bottom right called the shaker, creating, surprisingly enough, a shaker style door. Using this highly technical drawing from my daughter-in-law, we had a 32-inch width, so we were going to make 2 doors that were 16 inches wide each, but we wanted to subtract a 16th off each door to make a 1/8 inch gap in the middle. They're going to be 14 inches high, and the rails and stiles are going to be 2 inches wide. These are the 2 bits that I used, and you can see the profiles and the drawing underneath them. We started with a test piece for our rail cut. The width doesn't necessarily matter, as we're just going to cut the profile and see how it looks. But we did make a mark 1/8 inch down from what would be the back surface. And this is how we gauge the depth of our router bit cut. Something I should point out now, mark the backs of your stiles and rails, either with a piece of painter's tape or with a pencil mark, and always have the back facing you when you're cutting on your router table. That way you don't get mixed up. We fit the rail router bit into our router table and match the bottom edge of the top cutter to our 1/8 inch line. And that will create the back profile on the rail with the cut on the top and the bottom. You can see the silver bearing in the middle. That is the depth that the tongue will be, and the wood rides on that as you make your cut. It also helps you create the depth for your fence, which we'll do next. So here we push a straight edge against the bearing and then match both sides of the fence to it, so the front of the fence is exactly level with the front of the bearing. Recheck it after you tighten down the fence because it can move sometimes as well. And now we make our test cut. You need to have a pusher in back of the wood because it's a very thin area and can easily twist if you don't have something behind it. There are also special rail coping sleds, such as those by Rockler and other companies, that you can buy or create on your own. So now that we've got our cut set up, we need to figure out the exact length of the rails we're going to make. The stiles are just the top to bottom distance of the doors, but the rails are going to be different. So you're going to take the total width you have and divide it in 2, as you're going to have 2 doors. So that's 16 from our distance of 32. We subtract the stiles in total. Each one's 2 inches, so we subtract 4. That gives us 12. Then we have to add the depth of both tongues, or the depth of the groove that we are going to make with our stile router bit. And you can measure that on the router bit, or you can measure it on your test piece. In our case, each one was 3/8 inch, so 2 of them is 3/4 inch. So the total length of our rail needs to be 12 3/4 inch, but remember we want a 1/8 inch gap between the doors, so we subtract a 16th. Time to cut our rails on the miter saw. We measure it precisely on the piece of wood that we're going to cut for the rail, and then set up a stop block with an accessory stop block in my case, since my T-track stop block doesn't get all the way down to 12 inches. And we cut all 4 rails the exact same length. Then just cut the rails, making sure you flip end for end and not flip it over. Time to switch to our stile bit, which will cut the slot not only on the stiles but also on the rails all the way around for the panel to fit in. We adjust the height on this to exactly match the tongue on the rails we've already cut. Do the same trick with the straight edge on the bearing in this router bit to get our depth of fence. And we start cutting our stiles and our rails. Make sure you use a feather board to hold it down onto the surface of the router table. Otherwise it may pop up, and you want this to be nice and level. It's easiest to use a push block on the side to hold it directly against the fence as well. Now it's time to cut our panels. So we measure the opening in both directions, and remember we have to add the depth of the slot we've cut on both sides. In our case it was 12 inches with 3/8 inch on one side and 3/8 inch on the other, so 12 3/4 width. Make the same calculation for the height and go ahead and cut your panel. In our case we're using 1/4 inch plywood, but you can also use a thicker wood, and there are specific router bits which will cut it to the appropriate size to fit into your slot. Then it's just a case of gluing it up with the panel in place. I love the way these simple doors look. They were a lot of fun to make, and I really like the shaker style profile. Might try some other ones down the road, but I like this one as it is. Don't hesitate to let us know if there's anything that we at Dr. Hacksaw can do for you. Doors are just part of what we do.